The US government has approved an emergency spending package that will send $13 billion of aid to Ukraine to help them with the war with Russia. Should your country send aid to Ukraine? And if the answer is yes, what type of aid should be sent? Would it be lethal weapons, non-lethal aid, or humanitarian aid? And if you could vote directly on this emergency spending package, would you vote in favour of it or against it? If you're new to my content, One Direct Democracy is a movement for upgrading the global democratic system by taking the power away from politicians, putting it in the hands of the people with direct democracy. It'll also eliminate left and right politics. I've created the technology and a plan for how to make it work. If you want more information, check out the links in the description. For each episode, I'll pick an important issue, outline the problem, talk about the potential solutions, and then you can decide how you would vote. In this case, we'll be talking about how much aid should be provided to Ukraine. Okay, if you're just looking for another talking head that isn't actually interested in doing anything, you're in the wrong place. If you want to be part of the solution, let's get into it.
The U.S. House voted to approve a massive spending package Wednesday that includes $13.6 billion in emergency aid for Ukraine.
The first portion of the divided question is adopted.
That's on top of $1.5 trillion in funding to avoid an imminent government shutdown and keep things running through September 30th. Aid for Ukraine has been one of the few issues receiving bipartisan support in Congress. The latest package will be split across military and humanitarian funding for its citizens, more than 2 million of whom have already fled the country.
Okay, so what exactly did Congress approve? According to this article from The Conversation, President Joe Biden signed off on an emergency spending package that included $13.6 billion of aid for Ukraine back on March 11, 2022. Roughly half of the money, approved by Congress over the prior 2 days, is for military purposes. It includes $3.6 billion for weapons transfers and sales to Ukraine, and another $3 billion to support more US troops in Europe. So $3 billion out of the $13 billion will be used to support US troops that will not be participating in the war. A portion of the funds will support economic warfare against Russia, including efforts to seize assets of Russian oligarchs. But most of the economic aid will pay for humanitarian relief and disaster assistance. That includes helping refugees and aiding people displaced within Ukraine. Now, if you've been following all of this closely, you probably know that the US has already provided assistance that is not included in this emergency package. The total amount of aid the US is providing Ukraine exceeds the $13.6 billion in the spending package. On March 12, just 1 day after Biden signed the spending package, the White House announced another $200 million in immediate military assistance to Ukraine. It includes small arms and anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons from US defense stocks. Now, as a result of being in a war, Ukraine also needs a lot of emergency supplies. On the ground, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, is partnering with the United Nations agencies to position critical relief supplies throughout Ukraine, including emergency food, surgery and medical kits, thermal blankets and sanitation supplies. Since Russia invaded, USAID has provided $107 million in humanitarian aid. Now, some aid was also provided back in December when Russia first started moving troops along the Ukrainian border. By the time Russia attacked on February 24, Ukraine had already received most of the weapons from the $200 million assistance package announced in December 2021. Then more aid was provided immediately after the war started. Immediately after the invasion, Biden announced an additional $350 million in US weapons. That was on top of the US-provided Stinger anti-aircraft weapons and Javelin missile systems being transferred with American authorization from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to Ukraine. Another important point we need to consider is how much aid has been provided to Ukraine since the annexation of Crimea by Russia. The reason this matters is obvious. If Russia decided to invade Crimea, then it's not a stretch to assume that Russia will want to invade all of Ukraine. So the world should have been providing assistance to Ukraine to help them to build their military and prepare for a possible invasion of all of Ukraine by Russia. Between the annexation of Crimea and the Russian invasion, the US had provided more than $2.7 billion in security assistance. Most of this money has funded weapons, training and intelligence cooperation to help Ukraine fight these militias. More than 14,000 Ukrainians were killed between 2014 and 2021. Now, Ukraine has received more military assistance, but it was classified as non-lethal military assistance. Ukraine has also received $418 million annually since 2014 from the State Department and USAID. Some of this is officially designated as non-lethal assistance, but it includes items such as body armor, helmets, vehicles, heavy engineering equipment, and patrol boats that directly support the US and Ukrainian security objectives. Okay, what about humanitarian aid? In addition, an average of more than $350 million in US humanitarian aid has flowed to Ukraine annually since 2014. This funding provides essential relief items such as blankets and food vouchers, training for healthcare workers, and structural repairs to homes destroyed by the conflict. Okay, what about aid from countries other than the United States? Military assistance is coming from many additional countries, including $70 million from Australia and about $1.1 billion in military supplies from the European Union. Now, how is Russia responding to the fact that everybody's helping Ukraine and nobody's helping them? Russia's threatened to target military aid shipments. When and how military aid to Ukraine will be delivered, given Russian airstrikes on a Ukrainian military base near the Polish border, is unclear. Military analysts emphasize that Ukraine's strategy relies on urban warfare and a protracted war of attrition. Okay, well, I think that the reason that we don't know how this is going to work is obvious. None of this information is made public for the obvious reason that it will make it easier for Russia to target all of the military aid. I've created a listing on the One Direct Democracy platform that allows us to develop ideas about how we can help Ukraine. You can add your own ideas or vote and comment on ideas from other people. You can also create your own listings for people to vote on. It's a simple way to get used to using the One Direct Democracy system. The links are in the description. So that's a summary of the key issues. So, should your country send aid to Ukraine? And if the answer is yes, what type of aid should it send? Would it be lethal weapons, non-lethal aid, or humanitarian aid? In this case, the emergency spending package includes $13.6 billion of aid. Is that the right amount? Is it too much? Is it too little? And if you could vote directly on this emergency spending package, would you vote for it or against it? Let me know in the comments. The reality is that we've reached a point in time in our revolution where representative democracy no longer serves the will of the people, and the issues that made direct democracy impractical have been solved. That's why I created One Direct Democracy. It's a movement for upgrading the global democratic system by taking the power away from politicians and putting it in the hands of the people with direct democracy. I've created the technology and a plan for how to make it work. We also don't have to convince any politicians or powerful people to do anything to make this happen. We have the power to do it ourselves. We just have to decide to do it. If you're new to all of this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out the other videos on my channel and check out the links in the description. Direct democracy is the purest form of democracy. Representative democracy is an outdated, blunt instrument.